Hello everyone. So today we are going to start with a new topic, Agile methodology. This is a methodology that is being used in today's scenario, wherein a lot of models have come up in software engineering to develop a software. Now, if we talk about the previous models that are already existing in today's scenario, they are waterfall model, we have iterative models, we have RAD, and a lot many methodologies that are already existing in our system. Coming to Agile methodology, waterfall model has a limitation that all the phases of the model needs to be executed, like they have to be completed as a whole soul, and then only we moved on to the next phase of the waterfall model. But that has a drawback because in the real time scenario, it is not very much possible to think of a phase which has a complete information and then proceed on to the next phase. That problem came up over with the iterative models and enhancement models, wherein the regular feedback of the user was taken up and the designing of the software was done accordingly. Agile methodology is the latest technology that is being used for business purposes, and it is very much necessary that the user has to get something in his hand which he could work upon, where the developers are doing their job of developing the software. So both the things, using the software along with the developing the new phase of the software, both goes hand in hand. So Agile methodology is advantageous in that case, wherein the waiting time of the user is not very much. So in the earlier models, like if we talk about the waterfall model, the waiting time of the user was very long. The user gave the requirement, and till the time he used to get a software, it has been a very long period, wherein it could be a possibility that the use of the software may not be of that much effectiveness, where it could be when the user gave the requirements to the developer or the team. That problem was overcome by the Agile methodology. So here what happens is the developers quickly adapt to the requirements of the user. They create small segments of the software and then deploy it to the user so that the user can use it and then he can evaluate it and give his feedback. So Agile methodology is a project management approach which prioritizes the cross-functional collaborations and for the continuous improvements, because when the collaboration between the user and the developer is there, there is a scope of improvement, because the user can give his feedback and that feedback can be implemented into the later parts of the software. And hence the project is divided into smaller phases and the teams work upon accordingly. Small independent blocks are being built, the sprints are being built, and then they are combined together to form a whole software. So Agile method works in ongoing sprints of project planning and execution, enabling you to continuously adapt and mature your plan, scope, design throughout the project. So that is what we were talking about. Earlier, this wasn't available in the waterfall model or the models that have been obsolete, because there the time frame or the waiting time was too long that the scope of improvement wasn't there. But here, because the project is divided into small sprints, so the planning is done in that manner. The user gave his requirements, those are categorized into different sprints and accordingly they are being executed, due to which the depth or the explanation or the designing of this project is possible into a very detailed way. This Agile methodology works on the iterative part, wherein small iterations are being given to the user to use it. So it is an iterative approach. It works on the incremental basis. First, a sprint is being produced, given to the user, then in the next increment the feedback is taken and then it is being again created with the next cycle and given to the user. So here the constant delivery of the product is there from the the team side to the customer. So here the customer satisfaction is very much, because the customer is getting a workable product at each and every phase, rather than getting the whole full-fledged product at the end. Now we have been discussing about sprint in the previous slide. Now what exactly is sprint? So when we talk about a sprint, it is a kind of a time period during which a specific work has to be completed, and it is to be made ready for the review and further for the user to use it. So we can understand sprint as a very limited time period which has been decided in the beginning itself when the project planning is being done. The time period for sprint is could range between some few days to few weeks or few months. Now once the sprint time has been decided, the sprint should remain constant throughout the product. Now how it works upon? Each sprint begins with a planning meeting, because we have to plan a meeting to understand what all things will be done in this sprint. Then the product owner and the project owner both are required. Product owner is a person who needs the product, who is requesting the work that yes, I want all this work to be done. The project owner is the owner who makes sure that the requirements or the work that the product owner is requesting is being completed in a particular sprint. So here the development team has a final say when it comes to determining how much work needs to be done in a realistic manner. Because sometimes what happens when the product owner comes to the team or to the project owner, they comes up with a lot of requirements which cannot be completed at one point of time. Hence, here the product owner also needs to understand that the product will be developed in cycles or maybe in sprints, wherein the development team will say that this much work will be given to you in one sprint, the next work will be given to you in the next sprint. Now duration, now the question arises, who will decide what is the sprint time? Now the duration of the sprint is determined by the Scrum Master, the person who controls everything. He is a team facilitator and also the manager of the Scrum framework. So that the people who are managing the whole of the team, they decide depending upon the user's requirements, they decide the sprint time, and all the future sprints should be the same. So that lasts up to 30 days. So that is the maximum time. It could be less than that as well. It could be few days or few weeks. So once the sprint begins, the product owner takes a back seat. Now it is a team who works upon it and then gives a workable product after every sprint for the user to use it. So the project owner may not make request for the changes during the sprint, because if the project owner will be requesting the changes, then it would be very difficult to incorporate all those changes in a specific sprint. Hence, the project owner won't be making any request. What all requests or what all requirements have been gathered or what all things have been decided initially in the planning, only those things will be given in the current sprint. If the project owner has some changes needs to be done, those changes are taken care of in the next sprint. Next comes the software development life cycle. Like every methodology, be it waterfall, be it RAD or anything, here Agile methodology also has a life cycle for it. Now this life cycle model or this SDLC, it breaks down the product into small increments that we are discussing till now, because developing a software as a whole and giving it to the user is of no use for him maybe after 6 months or a year. So the requirement of day-to-day technology or the user's requirement now changed, wherein He wants something workable after a certain period of time. So the waiting period has been reduced. So to reduce that waiting period, it became necessary to give them something that is workable for them. Hence, this SDLC model, it breaks the product into small increments, which increases the customer satisfaction, because customer is satisfied from the beginning stage rather than getting satisfied at the end stage. So these are the 6 phases of the SDLC. Here the first phase comes up as the requirement gathering. Now here the requirements are being gathered by the user and they are analyzed as well, because sometimes what happens that the user may come up with those requirements which cannot be completed or which may have some constraints. So all those things are analyzed at this stage only, so that the product owner gets to know what all requirements will be completed in this phase, in this project. So once the requirement gathering has been done, then comes up the designing part. Now this designing would require the different things, that could be SDD or the other designs which help in coding it or constructing the software. This designing is important because until and unless this design is detailed design, the construction phase cannot work up. The construction here the construction would mean the coding of the software. So if the designs are the detailed ones, only then we would be able to construct the software in a very detailed manner, and the quality of the software or the quality of that particular sprint can be taken care of. Iterations, because it is an iterative process. We are not constructing the software as a whole. We are creating it in, or we are developing it in different increments. Hence, the construction and iteration purely depends upon the designing the requirements. If the designing phase is detailed, then it is very easy to enter into the construction phase. Once the iterations are being done, we move on to the deployment phase. The deployment phase is a phase wherein the user comes into the picture, because the sprint or the software that we have developed is deployed at the user's end for his use. Once it is deployed, it may be a possibility that there is a scope of improvement or the bugs arise. So that is being done in the testing phase, wherein all the testings like unit testing, integration testing, system testing comes up, and later on the feedback is taken up from the user. So this is what we have just understood. Requirements. In the requirement gathering and analysis phase, the requirements are defined, the business opportunities and planning of time and effort to build the project is being understood or being taken care of. It is based on this information only, the technical and the economic feasibility is evaluated. Economic feasibility and technical feasibility is how much fruitful or beneficial this project will be in the long run. So technical feasibility inspects whether the software can be built at all with available tools and experts, and it examines the cost and the financial benefit of the project. Because if the project is of no benefit in the long run, then it is of no use to develop a project initially. Then these requirements are designed through different diagrams, like we have discussed about the SDD diagram in the SDD, that is software design document. In software design document, we design everything that is being done pictorially, because understanding the SRS in the requirement gathering would be a little bit difficult, but the pictorial representations are, or the diagrammatic representations are easy to understand and implement later on. Then comes the construction. Now once the team defines the requirements, the designers and developers start working on their project. In the designing phase, we have seen that the diagrammatic designing is being done. Here the developers start coding the code, the software, and then it is deployed. Deployed here means basically that the user is given, or it is being working onto the user's environment. That could be the environment that is related to the software the user would be using. So we will be deploying it in that environment, the environment which the user use, and later on we move on to the testing phase. Because sometimes what happens, when the software is being deployed at the user's environment, then some bugs arise. So those bugs are taken care of in the testing, where again the unit testing, each and every module or each and every unit of the software is tested. Integration, wherein 2 or more modules are integrated together to test, and then the system is tested as a whole. So all those testings comes up in the testing phase. Here the quality assurance team examines the product's performance, because it is the duty, or it is the developer's duty to develop a software that is qualitative. If the software is bug free, then automatically it increases the quality of the software. The software becomes qualitative. If the quality is not up to the mark, the software is not giving the expected result, then it is very difficult for the user to use that software, because it is not meeting his expectations. So quality software is the motive of the team to provide it to the user. Then comes the feedback. Once the product is released, now this is the last step, where the feedback is being received from the user. Now the team receives the feedback and it starts working on it. It works through the feedback and then it moves on to the next sprint. So this is the life cycle of the whole of the project. Every project that comes that is being developed using the Agile methodology, it has to move into these 6 phases. So if we understand it over here, we first start with analyzing the user requirements, which came up with the requirement phase, requirement analysis. Then on the basis of the requirements that the user gave, we design it. The designing of the software is being done. Where comes the SDDs? Once the design has been done, we start with coding, that is implementing the design. Coding is done, we document and test. That means we move into the testing phase. This is the implementation phase. Wherein the code is implemented. Once the code is being generated, it moves into the testing phase. Once the documentation is being done for the user to understand why and how the how the software works, and testing the system, whether there are bugs or is it bug free. Once everything is being done, it is being deployed and then it moves into the maintenance phase. So this comes out to be the maintenance phase, wherein the feedback from the user is taken. So here the feedback also is taken from the user. Once the feedback has been taken, we again move to understanding or analyzing those feedbacks again, and then again the requirements are analyzed, and hence the cycle goes on and on. Now comes the advantages. Because the software has been divided into small iterations, here the flexibility of changing the process is there. Because if the software is to be developed all together at once and then we need a change, it is very difficult to incorporate that change. But since the project is divided into iterations, divided into small prototypes or sprints, it is easy to change or to bring a change in between the software. It minimizes the risk of software development, because the software, we understand from the initial stage that the software has to be developed, but sometimes what happens, after coming to a certain stage, we understand some limitations of it. So that risk of understanding those limitations or coming up with the limitations in the between stage, it reduces that risk, because each increment is a workable prototype that we give to the user. Quick releases are being there, and the correctness of the functional requirements is implemented, because the user feedback is taken up at each and every stage. The disadvantages: the development team should be highly professional and client oriented. It should not be the case that the team is not given the training, because if the team is not provided with the appropriate training, it is not possible for them to develop a quality software. If suppose new requirements may conflict with the existing architecture, because initially the user gave the requirements, but later on he requires some changes. Now those changes, it might be a possibility that already existing architecture that we have, it might not fit into it. Then it is very difficult to manage those changes. It may be difficult to estimate the project's final cost because of different iterations. The requirements of the user keeps on increasing, they keeps on changing, and hence the cost cannot be defined. With further correction and change, there may be chances that the project will cross the expected time, because every time there is no limit for the user to give his requirements. If the requirements are changing, the corrections are being done, the changes are being done, the time span in which the project needs to be completed, it may cross that time. Now we have the next thing, that is Scrum. Now Scrum is a framework which works onto the Agile methodology, but it gives you the way how to work on it. It provides a structure to the Agile teams how to work. So they help the teams to prioritize, manage and execute their work, and it describes a set of tools, meetings and roles of the team. Earlier when we were talking about Agile methodology, it was just a thing that was discussed in a whole. Now Scrum is a part of it which describes the detailed things, what the team has to do, which team has to do, what is the role of each team member. Everything is being discussed over here. It encourages the team to learn through patience and practice and self-organize while working on the problem, and it is the most frequently used software nowadays. Now it is the methodology that includes in the Scrum is the product backlog, sprint planning, and the series of sprints are being given. Now product backlog, it includes the necessary features and functionalities that need to be added to the software. So that is again the planning part, wherein we plan and the necessary features and functionalities are given for the software. Once the requirements are decided, the sprint is being planned. The team figure out how to achieve the most important objective. And then we have a series of sprints that are being we have this series of sprints that are being given to the user to use and in the form of a working project. Now because Agile is a very broad methodology and Scrum is just a part of it, we have some differences between the Agile and Scrum. Agile talks about the iterative and the incremental approach, wherein in Scrum we have the incremental builds which are being given to the user in every 2 to 3 weeks. But in Agile, we had the maximum time period of 1 month. In Agile, we had a leadership quality needs to be there in the the project owner. But Scrum is a cross-functional team wherein everyone works. They have their own responsibilities. There is no head over here. In Agile, Agile is mostly suitable for medium or large projects, wherein if we talk about Scrum, it is required for those softwares where the requirements change very rapidly. The changing requirements decide whether we have to go towards Scrum or any other thing or the Agile. For Agile, the flexibility is more significant advantage, but for Scrum, it is more rigid because frequent changes cannot be there. The requirements keep on changing. So, those requirements should be limited to a process to an extent that it can be incorporated. It should not be that every time the changes are being done. So, it is rigid in the sense that whatever requirements came for first sprint, it will be implemented only till that part. The next changes will be taken up, next requirements will be taken up in the next sprint. In Agile, the project leader takes care of all the tasks, wherein in Scrum, the entire team handles the issue because here is no head in the Scrum. The design and execution should be kept simple for everyone to understand, but in Scrum, it is in an innovative and experimental way because there in Agile, the leader is only one. But in Scrum, because there are many people, so they come up with innovative ideas, they experiment, and the best thing is being implemented. So, Scrum gives more scope of innovation rather than in Agile. Now, in Agile, the working software is the most fundamental measure of progress, wherein in Scrum, the working software is not the fundamental measure. Here, the thing is that a sprint is to be produced. It could be in a workable or in a non-workable manner because the user may not be involved in each and every Scrum. Thank you.